Our first speaker tonight is Joey Mao. He is a second-year CLEG major with a minor in communications. This is his first ever TED Talk, but he is very excited to share with us what he thinks would happen in an apocalyptic event. Please give it up for Joey.
In March of 2018, at 4 a.m. in the morning, world-renowned astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted out the following. In 5 billion years, as the sun begins to die, its outer layers of glowing plasma will expand stupendously, engulfing the orbits of Mercury, then Venus, as the charred ember that once was the oasis of life called Earth vaporizes into the vacuum of space. Have a nice day. This grim, yet confusingly optimistic tweet ushered in a bevy of Twitter responses. Internet theorists began offering their opinions on how they believe the world may come to an end. Many agreed with Tyson's tweets, but others offered a harrowing idea. What if Tyson is wrong, and that in 5 billion years, the sun won't take over the Earth because the Earth won't be there? What if global pandemic, climate change, global conflict, and more result in what could be the way our world comes to an end? So, what really are the most likely ways in which our world will come to an end? The 2020 global coronavirus pandemic shook the entire world. But what if coronavirus had been even more deadly? Well, according to experts at the CDC, the number of global pandemics is expected to quadruple over the next decade. Additionally, scientists at the CDC claim that it is incredibly likely that the pandemics of the future will be deadlier, more contagious, and harder to kill than COVID when it was at its worst. In addition to, or the most likely and most urgent apocalyptic threat to humanity is none other than climate collapse. Just last month, the United Nations panel of scientists reported that humans only have 8 years to stop what could be catastrophic levels of climate change. At best, our planet will soon face more cyclones and severe tropical storms. Mid-range predictions would result in the leveling of coastal cities, and at worst, well, we'd see the end of the human race. In addition to global health or climate collapse, humans could face extinction due to international conflict as well. Today, several countries possess a nuclear arsenal strong enough to destroy the entirety of the world. And as tensions rise in Ukraine, Russia, North Korea, the US, and China, and more, there's no telling as to what decisions could lead to an eventual global collapse. In addition to the most likely apocalyptic events, a large variety of unnatural forces could bring an end to the human race as we know it. There's no telling if science fiction beasts like zombies or aliens, or something we don't even know of yet, could come and wipe out our race. So what does this mean? The chances of human survival over the next century aren't so high. So what effect does this have on the human psyche? Well, the threat of global conflict can make several people nihilistic. And for those of you who don't know what that is, there you go. Nihilism, the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. Or in other words, nothing matters. For finals, TED Talks, summer plans, none of it matters if the world is going to end, right? Well, not exactly. In my view, the threat of imminent apocalypse, meaning that nothing can matter, can be viewed in one of two ways. We can choose to be nihilistic, give up, and decide that our lives have no meaning. Or we can assign our own meaning to life. We can choose to be nihilistic and give up. Since nothing matters, you are free to assign value to whatever you want. You don't have to feel like you've wasted your life playing video games or reading comic books. It made you happy, so it mattered. And if it mattered to you, then you mattered too. So please, love with the time that we do have. Appreciate growing up. Call home to your families, spend time with your friends, and fall in love with the world around you. Because we really don't know when the world could end. So before you start your day tomorrow, decide for yourself what truly, honestly matters to you. If you enjoy the time you waste, then you really aren't wasting any time at all. Because when the apocalypse rolls around, nothing will matter. We decide what matters. Thank you.
Evan Maynard is a sophomore studying public relations and strategic communications, with hopes of working for corporate America in order to sustain his growing vinyl collection. In his free time, he can be found listening to music, hiking, or hanging out with friends. Tonight, he is here to talk to us about silence. Please help me welcome Evan tonight.
Studies show that music, a fundamental element of popular culture and an integral part of many people's lives, is incredibly addictive. In some cases, it's even more addictive than alcohol, drugs, and even sex. I know what you're all thinking, Evan, I'd rather be addicted to music than alcohol or cocaine. And to that statement, I would agree. Music has had and continues to have many positive impacts on my life and mental well-being. However, many individuals, such as myself not long ago, underestimate the power of silence. Many people neglect the power of music withdrawal and intrapersonal connection. Silence, stillness, introspection, these are aspects of our world that are sometimes shrouded in a state of perpetual soundtrack. Silence allows us to digest the thoughts in our minds that we often look to music for refuge. It was my freshman year, and as many of you can attest, the first year was a tumultuous one, filled with dynamic highs and lows. My freshman year, at least the first semester, was filled with frequent lows. My lows consisted of imposter syndrome, failed talking stages with girls, my horrendous freshman year GPA, which I was paying $60,000 for, the usual. In order to combat these frequent lows, I did what any sane college student would do. I planned a walking path, ending with my special rock, which I would sit on and contemplate my crises. In addition, I constructed a lengthy, depressing Spotify playlist to unhealthily romanticize my depression. I blurred out the name for embarrassment protection. It's right here, though. Now, so far, I really have presented a sarcastic depiction of my mental health freshman year, but I want to emphasize I truly wasn't well. Going out 3 times a week, combined with nightly sulking walks, had sunk me into a well of depression that I was struggling to find a way out of. This mental state impacted my ability to connect with my current friends, family, and make new ones. And it also prevented me from going about my life in a healthy way. I needed something to bring me out of this well, and my default methods of reclusively listening to music in my dorm or wherever I went weren't helping. This all changed on a night that started out like many others, but not on purpose or because of any forethought on my part. Walking out of my dorm at 2 a.m., this was a normal departure on one of my walks. Stepping off campus that night, the air was thick and heavy, a result of a thunderstorm earlier that evening. Walking out on the dimly lit street, I reached into my pocket to pull out my AirPods. Upon placing them in my ears, I realized they were dead. I had no music to listen to, no mental distraction to accompany my melancholy walk, where I would confront the same feelings that I was plagued with all semester. However, I decided to continue on my walk, musicless. But this was concerning to me. As someone who used music as a crutch for so long, I felt like I was missing something. It felt like forgetting my keys or walking around without my phone. I felt uneasy and vulnerable. I felt naked. For the first time in the entire semester, I was forced to not only listen to the thoughts in my head, but confront them head on. This feeling, again, was uncomfortable, but this discomfort had morphed into something new. The interpersonal connection I once ran from now felt like a wave of euphoric release. As I reached my rock, I climbed up the side and sat crisscross in the middle. And it was to my embarrassing surprise that tears began to well up in my eyes. Quickly wiping them away, as if I was being watched by the whole world at 2:30 a.m., I was finally faced with the reality of my situation. I knew I could make it to the other side of the tunnel, as corny as it sounds. I learned a lot in those 9 minutes that it took me to reach my rock, but the lesson that I learned the most, or that it stuck with me the most, is that the key to self-mastery and recovery in a situation like mine is being able to confront and accept your feelings without distracting yourself from them. In my case, the biggest distraction was music. Now, music is perhaps the greatest blessing in my life, but it also turned into one of the greatest distractions that I've had to learn to disconnect from, at least every once in a while. So I compel all of you to go about your day, whether it's once or twice a week or once a month, and take out your headphones. Listen to the blissful sounds of silence, and I promise you it's an experience you'll be coming back to for the rest of your life. Thank you.
Our final speaker tonight is Adrina Arakelian. She is a sophomore in the School of Public Affairs, and this is her last class at AU for a while because she's spending the next academic year in London, England. Adrina is an avid Taylor Swift fan, and she finds a way to bring her into practically everything she does. Please join me in welcoming Adrina.
Psychology is profound. Taylor Swift is an international superstar. So how on earth are these two connected? Well, the answer isn't black and white, but rather it's golden. As many of you may know, Taylor Swift has decided to re-record her first 6 studio albums. The motivation behind it is what links these two seemingly disparate topics together. If you're not a diehard Swiftie like myself, some helpful background information is necessary. So are you ready for it? Before getting into psychological motivations for Swift's decision to re-record, it's important to understand the magnitude of her success. She has 10 studio albums and is on her 6th tour. And I think we all remember the Ticketmaster debacle. It made its way to Capitol Hill. She has 12 Grammy Awards, 14 MTV Awards, and 1 Artist of the Decade. And most recently, she has 10 albums charting in Billboard's Top 100. I could go on and on about her success, but I believe this gives you a strong idea. So how does this fuel her decision to re-record? Well, that works in tandem with the sale of her masters. And if you don't know, masters are the original recording of a song that subsequent copies are made from, and that's how record labels make their money. There's a long, complicated, and hurtful history regarding the sale of her masters, but for the sake of this speech, I will try my best to consolidate it. It started with Taylor Swift telling her old record label, hey, when my masters become available, I'd like to buy them. Instead of letting her spend upwards of $300 million on it, they sold her life's work to Scooter Braun, someone she has publicly feuded with for his malicious behavior towards her. Braun then taunted her with the ability to buy her masters from him so long as she signed an NDA saying she won't speak ill of him in public. Swift, of course, denied this, and Braun sold her masters to a third-party company, effectively shutting Taylor Swift out from her own life work and putting it in the hands of people who don't have any respect towards the creator. So hopefully this makes it a little clear as to why she decided to begin again and re-record her old music. The first step to explaining why Swift would re-record is a phenomenon called psychological ownership. A study by Suzanne B. Shu and Joanne Peck defines psychological ownership as anticipatory possession or pseudo-endowment. Their study develops how this concept can capture feelings of ownership and assesses how that affects valuation. We all have that feeling of this is ours, this is mine, even if it's not, and that affects how much we think it's worth. For someone who created as much as she has, Swift must have a strong sense of this is mine. And interestingly enough, their study notes how psychological ownership can exist without legal ownership. So despite not owning the masters, Taylor Swift still exerts a psychological ownership because of everything she put in to create them. And according to Michael Norton, the amount of effort put into creating something increases our fondness for it. And we also form an attachment, which explains why we want to own the things that we make. He dubs this concept the IKEA effect. So what role does a Swedish furniture company play here? Well, just think about any time you've tried to assemble one of their pieces. Norton's study starts with the subjects assembling an IKEA kit, moving to origami, and then building a Lego set. And the results conclude that labor alone can be sufficient to induce greater likings for the fruits of one's labor. Just like building an IKEA set takes effort, so too does writing a song. And Taylor Swift has talked about this numerous times throughout her career about the songwriting process and how it varies. Sometimes it's writing to a track her friend produces, or waking up in the middle of the night to jot down a lyric or melody. Regardless, it's definitely a labor-intensive process. And the research suggests that particularly when people successfully complete a labor-intensive task, that they come to value the fruits of their labor more. Remember all those awards and records Taylor Swift has? I think it's fair to say she's incredibly successful in completing a task that she starts. So this explains her high valuation of the work and why she doesn't want it to be in the hands of people who don't value it the same way. In a study by Lauren Marsh, she writes that it seems there is something special about the created item which makes it more valuable. This is definitely the case with Taylor Swift and her music. She is working hard on these re-records to have legal ownership over her work because psychology tells us it's already hers. I want to widen the scope a little bit because all of this can relate to you too. Though you might not be creating the next record-breaking pop album, you create things every day. And you should remember that those creations are yours and no one else's. When you have that "this is mine" feeling, it's very real, and don't forget that. You work hard on whatever you choose to produce, whether it's something for school or something extracurricular. Take pride in that. And if someone tries to take that away from you or refute your claims of ownership, at the very least, psychology is on your side. Thank you.